All right, guys, thank you for coming. This massive audience we have here today, it's incredible. I can see you all the way out in the rafters. Some people's noses are bleeding already.
I can't even see those guys back there.
It's far. It's really deep. Anyway, I am Dr. Matthew Geller. I am the founder of newgradoptometry.com. It's an online resource for new graduates, all free stuff, content, resources, and CovalentCareers. I'm the co-founder of. We help optometrists find jobs, and we coach them on really anything they need. To the left, I have actually my Suny roommate for 4 years. We graduated together in 2013, one of my best friends. Quy is also the director for career development at Suny?
Yeah.
Okay, so he's got a wealth of information for us, and an optometrist with a ton of unique experience, real-world experience that'll be helpful for this panel. To Quy left, we have Dr. Patricia Fulmer. She practices in Huntsville, Alabama. She's had great experience, particularly in direct care with ocular disease and co-management of difficult patients. And she's transitioning to a private practice environment now. To her left, we have Dr. Brett Kestenbaum. He's actually a physical therapist. He's the co-founder of CovalentCareers as well, and our head of customer success. He talks with optometrists probably more than I have in my entire life in the last year. So he knows what employers are looking for, what their troubles are, and you know, probably some tips for the folks all the way out there in the rafters for employment. To Brett's left, we've got Danny Goodrich. Danny's a corporate attorney. He's also part of the founding team at CovalentCareers. He's our head of candidate success. So he's talked with more optometrists than probably I ever have. And this marks his actually 1-year anniversary in eye care, which is pretty cool. And he's just got a wealth of experience, and he sees it through a different light. So we're going to get some phenomenal stuff. So this talk's going to be around building a career inside and outside the exam room. And I guess, Quy, you know, you have some really close experience with fourth years about to graduate now. What's the #1 worry that's coming out from these fourth years who are about to hit the job market or start their first job?
Obviously, because you're about to graduate, you're thinking about your first job. So I think the job search is certainly on their mind. Once they start working and they see their loans and their bills coming in, then that becomes the #2 worry. But I think that #1 is the job search. You know, they're kind of thinking about, well, where do I want to practice? What kind of mode of practice do I want to work in? You know, where do I want to live? Those are the questions that they're kind of thinking about now. So it's good that we have CovalentCareers and AOXL, and you know, the schools have their job listings so they can kind of start thinking about where they want to work.
How early should they get started, do you think, on this process?
You know, I know people who started even earlier this year, at the start of fourth year, and there's people who's waiting until they graduate to look for jobs. I don't think that you're in a bad spot if you're waiting until now or even the next few weeks and the next month to look at jobs, because a lot of jobs in optometry, I feel like they need them quick, right? So practices can't anticipate hiring somebody 6 months or even a year in advance. I think that's kind of unusual. I think it's usually like someone's on maternity leave, or somebody wants to go on vacation, they need to fill in. Or if someone's retiring, then I think they'll know a little bit sooner. But I think a couple months out should be fine, you know.
Got it. Danny, what's your philosophy? I know we talk a lot about really kind of always be searching, always be building, networking connections, and how that may work with some of the employers you talk to.
Yeah, I would agree with Quy. You absolutely can find an excellent job right after graduation. There are opportunities, and it is rapid fire like that. But I would also say, if you're gunning for a particular location or a particular practice modality, or, you know, sort of that sexy boutique optical store in downtown Manhattan, you may not find that right out of school, and if you're gunning for it, you should start early. Your options are a little more limited by time if you wait until graduation.
So I think also something that's important that a lot of people don't know about is called the informational interview. While you're a student, something that most of your peers are not going to do is reach out to practice owners and just ask them questions. Don't even worry about what the questions are. I mean, make them relevant. You know, talk to them, ask them about their careers, maybe ask them about how they got into being a practice owner, ask them tips about patients, maybe if you're on clinicals, and you can reach out through platforms like LinkedIn or CovalentCareers, or you can even just call a practice and say that you're a student doing a project for a group. But that will develop your relationship with those people, and that'll go a long way in the future, because they might even say to you, hey, look, I'm thinking about hiring, you know, 6 months from now, like Danny's saying, would it be okay if I kept your resume on file or whatever it is? And that will build your network. Also, you can ping that employer at another time and say, hey, do you know another practice in your area that's looking? and they might actually have an opportunity for you as well.
Yeah, and I think it's important to remember that looking for a job doesn't necessarily start the day you post your resume or the day that you contact Covalent or something like that. When you're in school, you're going to events like this, you're looking for a job, you're networking, you're making connections. You never know, if you go to the bar one night and talk to somebody, they may open 5 different opportunities for you, a year later. So make sure you're making those connections, make sure you're putting yourself out there. If there is somewhere, like Danny said, that you want to be, make sure you're saying that. You put it out there. You're not going to get what you want unless you ask for it. So make sure that you let people know ahead of time, hey, I'm looking for this. If you hear of anything, let me know.
There's a lot of networking events that you guys will be at as 4th years, as 3rd years, like we have in the crowd, 2nd years. And when it comes to those networking events, my tip is never really go in big groups of people. You can arrive in big groups of people, but when you're going around and walking around, whether it's a CE event locally or a show like this, Vision Expo East, 1 or 2 people. And the reason is because it's a lot easier to approach someone, whether a sales rep who may have a connection for you, or whether it's an employer themselves. If you go up in a group of 5, it's just way too much social bombardment for you to ever really build a connection. So go up with 2 people max, deliver the business card, do the handoff. You need to follow up first with them. So I've got a pocket full of business cards here, and the first thing I'll do is get it out of the way and contact all of them. If they don't contact me back, I've done my due diligence, and let it ride from there.
Yeah, and I want to add to that too. Business cards are great, but I've started giving people business cards. They give me theirs, and then I'll add them on LinkedIn because it's kind of permanent. Once they're in your network, then they'll always be there. So if you want to reach out to them later, well, they'll already be there, and then you can just search for their name, and then you can contact them that way. And I think the older generation of optometrists are maybe not adopting too much of the LinkedIn, but certainly our generation, we're starting to get up there. And in fact, a lot of the younger professionals who have practices, they are looking on LinkedIn, actually. So you want to make sure that you're adding people on there, too.
So let's take a bigger step back here first and really say, what does success look like? Because we were talking before, should I do a residency or not? And I think it all depends on what is your definition of success, right? Where do you really want your career and life to go? So, you get students who come in and are talking to you. How do you get to that answer quickly?
Well, I think it's really hard to really know where you want to be in 10 years or 20 years or 30 years. I feel like that's so far out. You know what I mean? But generally, you want to have an idea of where it is that you want to go, whether it's, do you want to teach at a university? Do you want to work in a private practice? Do you want to own, or do you want to start something cold? So I think you got to figure out which of those it is that you want first. And then we typically will make goals for the students. So we do something called SMART goals, okay? So I'm sure if you Google that, you'll see what I mean, but we make short-term goals. So the next 3 months or the next 3 weeks. We make medium-term goals next year, and then we make also long-term goals, the next few years. I think it helps to kind of just put things in perspective a little bit, you know what I mean?
Sure, absolutely, yeah. So for you, you got out of school and you started an ophthalmology practice, high volume. Share your experience with that and how it didn't necessarily relate to what you thought would be successful for you. Or what was that environment like in patient care, and how does one know if they're in the right patient care environment?
Yeah, so let's talk about that, right? So when I graduated, a lot of people say, you want something full-time so that you can get your, W-2, you get your benefits, you get your CE money. It's nice to have that, but actually, if you don't find a full-time job right away, I actually think doing fill-ins and doing a lot of different kind of part-time work is not a bad option. I actually started doing that first, Matt. So I started filling in a couple different practices here and there. I consulted for a startup that does auto refracting. It gives you a taste of what things are like, because you hear all the time on panels and you read about it, what it's like to work in a VT practice, what's it like to work at a hospital. But I think unless you really work there yourself, it's hard to kind of really get the sense of whether or not you like that or not. So I would say work at a couple different places and then figure out if those are good environments you want to work in. After I did that for some time, like Matt said, networking is important. So I got referred to an ophthalmologist because he needed an OD. And I just happened to be a really good student in clinic, and
Really good.
My supervisor in clinic actually referred me to the ophthalmologist, and so that's how I got that job. But ophthalmology was a lot different than what I was taught in school. So my first eye exam, I don't know how long yours took. Mine took a little bit over 2 hours. And I still remember the patient exactly, 40 like mid-40s, diabetic. Took a long time. Ophthalmology, now I'm having to see patients in 5 10, sometimes 15 minutes at a time, so it's super fast paced. You're seeing so much pathology, stuff that I would refer out normally, like a nerve palsy or a bleed or a detachment. Well, now optometrists are referring to our ophthalmology practice because they couldn't handle a case, and then I have to handle those cases. So I think that's really, really scary. But I think that we're extremely adaptable. So regardless of whether or not you think you can handle it, after I worked there for a couple months, I actually felt pretty good. I was seeing about 20, 25 patients a day, and it was just fine. And having a tech really helped speed that up a little bit. So
I would text him my difficult cases and say, what am I looking at?
Yeah.
Patricia, too. Danny, you talk with 50 candidates a day. How do you help them define success? Because they come to you and they go, wow, all these things. And how do you say, get focused here?
I identify with what Quy said about setting goals. What's your long-term goal? What do you envision ultimately being your ideal practice modality? And then short-term goals are probably more important, right? We don't have a crystal ball. It's likely that you're going to change the way you feel about practice once you start practicing. There is a stigma about certain types of modalities, retail in particular. I don't fully understand why. I mean, we're coming out of school with a couple $100,000 of debt, and there is an opportunity for you that might not be exactly what you envisioned coming out of school, but certainly we can change modalities throughout our careers, correct?
Yeah, absolutely. And one major point, I'm on more of the philosophical side of this, but one of my mentors said this to me, and success is all in your mind. It's really what you make of it. Your career, everything is what you make of it. And this has been actually a common theme here at the show so far with a lot of the speakers up here. They've been talking about a lot of be honest with yourself. Be honest with who you are. A lot of people are going to give you a lot of different pieces of advice, but what you need to do is look deep inside yourself and find out what do you want in your life, what do you want in your career, and that will be your North Star, and that will guide you in the right direction every time. There's a lot of different opportunities out there for you, of course, but make sure that you're always honest with yourself and you'll be much happier in life.
Yeah, I think a lot of times those students get caught up on that, what do I want to be in 15 years? And like Quy said, it's a long time, We've been in school in segments, right? We did high school for 4 years. We did college for 4-ish years, optometry school for 4 years. And now you're asking me to think about what I want 30 years from now? Like, I can't do that. Unless you just know, okay, you came into it and you either had a passion or maybe you had a family member or some sort of opportunity that was just right there for you. I think looking at the short-term goals, putting yourself into what do I want for the next year? Okay, what's my goal? Am I looking to just explore a little and figure out what range fits me best. Maybe doing some part-time work, filling in some areas is a really good thing. Doing a residency is a great way to get an extra year under your belt of just kind of filling it out a little bit. You're going to learn a lot once you're actually seeing those patients on your own that will tell you, I really enjoyed that kind of patient. Okay, how do I drive myself toward that kind of practice? Or what, I really didn't enjoy that kind of patient. I need to not be in a practice. Let's say, personally, pediatrics is not my passion. So I wouldn't join a practice that, was 90% 5 and under. That would be awful for me. But it's perfect for some of my friends. I enjoy geriatrics. So I went more the medical, optometry disease route where that you see that a lot more. But I think doing that and also keeping that North Star in mind, though, not getting stuck in something just because it's available, but taking that as a stepping stone, learning from it, and then moving to the next thing is always important.
I just want to add one more thing to that, which is, like you said, it's really hard to know what you want exactly in the beginning. So that's why it's really important to, for me especially, I always thought that I would end up owning a practice. But once I graduated and I started working, I didn't really like that as much. And so I wanted to get into more, a situation where I could maybe travel a bit more, maybe get in front of students more and work with them, speak more, write more. So, success to me changed a little bit. Originally it was owning a practice, and now it's doing more speaking, working at school, working with students. So I think once you graduate, that will change for you as well, because you have this idea in your mind of what it is that you want, but it's probably going to change over time. And what was really important for me was I wanted to take care of my financial situation first, because I realized that there are certain jobs that would pay me more. And if I didn't have to worry about the money so much, and I could take care of my loans and be more financially secure, then I can take on jobs that would let me have more career capital. okay, and not let the salary of a job dictate it, whether or not I would take it. So I think that's a big thing for me.
Yeah, starting in the right place for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'd add to that, don't define your success. Say you start a practice and you're with them for a year and you realize that's not where you're going to end up. Don't look at that as a failure. You didn't do anything wrong by joining it. I guarantee you learned something. That's a success in itself. So just remember, it comes in a lot of different, modalities, a lot of different variations. Success looks different in every year of your life. I guarantee that. So keep that kind of positive mentality, and you'll take that next step, in a really good way.
So Patricia, you've done a lot of work being kind of like HR director of this busy co-management center, hiring, firing. What are the top 3 qualities that an optometrist has when joining a practice? I know you guys are doing a bunch of hiring now. What are those top 3? How could you distill it down so that our crowd can take those home and practice those things?
So I think if we break it down more into just personal characteristics and then also kind of the resume, if you're joining a practice and it's a private practice, you maybe have a little more flexibility in what you need to bring to the table, clinically. Whether you're just a brand new student right out, a lot of private practices are looking for that because they can mold you. You can grow into their practice. You can learn. You're not expecting a full schedule 5 days a week. They like those sort of things. But if you're looking to be a little more specialized, considering a residency is a very good thing to do because a lot of these MD/OD practices, a lot of the kind of specialized things are looking for that extra bit of training. So like I said, unless you've got the perfect opportunity right in front of you, I would definitely encourage you to look at doing a residency, if for nothing else than to have that credential on your resume because you're going to learn, you're going to grow. It's a really good place to network, all of those sort of things. Beyond that, confidence, coming in and interviewing, you're not going to know everything that sits down in your chair. Like we said, I had the same experience. They sit down and you go, all of my friends would have referred that. Yeah. But I got to handle it now, right? So we're going to figure it out. You go pull your wheels. You say, I need to go check one thing really quickly. You never let them see that, step out of the room, you go look it up or call somebody, and then you figure it out and you go in and handle it. But bringing that confidence to the table, they don't expect you to know everything day one, but they do expect you to be able to handle yourself in a way that's going to let that patient feel confident in you. Beyond that, I'd say the third thing is a willingness to bring something to the table to help grow the practice. You don't have to have a perfect business plan when you sit down with them. If you do, that's awesome. But being willing to look at them and say, I'm interested in taking on this niche that the practice doesn't have, or I'm, really interested in, say, specialty contact lenses. I see that y'all don't do this. Why don't we look at that down the road? Again, they're not going to expect you to do it day one, but they know that you're thinking about a future there, and they're also thinking you're investing in them just like they're investing in you. So those would be my 3 things. Get yourself specialized if you can. Bring your confidence to the table. You know what you're doing. You're all well-trained. You can absolutely handle whatever's there. Just know that you can. And then also try to have a growth path for that practice that fits in what you're looking for in the long term.
Brett, you get to talk with a lot of practices out there. What are the pain points they're having? How can some of these new graduate optometrists solve those pain points?
A big one is the way that you present yourself to your patients. So the doctors and the practice owners out there, like Patricia said, they're looking for someone who's going to come in with confidence, and even the patients as well. You can get a better outcome for your patients just by being confident with them, being upbeat, treating them like an individual, like a person. Even if you're not the best diagnostic professional, if you present yourself in a way that the patient can trust you, it's going to go a much longer way. And that's one of the biggest pain points that the doctors have, is they're finding a lot of trouble finding those individuals, finding those doctors. What I like to say is confidence is practice. Where you want to convey this confidence to the doctors that you're going to be looking for work with is in that interview. So a lot of people are extremely nervous to interview. They don't know what to expect. The big thing is practice, practice, practice for those interviews. The doctor will understand that you're coming in there and you can represent yourself well. And in turn, when you represent yourself and when you're in their practice, you're also representing the practice owner and the practice itself. So showing them that you can be there with a smile on your face, treating their patients well, is a major issue.
I would say before and after the interview is an incredible opportunity for you to display that confidence as well. In simple things. It sounds simple, but it's so infrequently practiced. Professional courtesy of following up with an email. The employers that I speak with are shocked that they don't get a courtesy phone call of yes, thank you for the interview. No, the opportunity is not for me. That in itself displays self-confidence and knowledge of what it is you want and don't want.
I'd like to add a little bit, though. There is a fine line there.
Sure.
Call, be polite, give them that consideration of thank you for your time because I know it's valuable, but don't pester them. Don't call back. Don't keep calling. We have people, whether it be staff or ODs or whatever, that will come and, maybe it's taking us a while because we've got other things. We're hiring for 5 positions at one time, and we've got to kind of, prioritize those by what the clinic needs. It may take us a little bit, to get back around to you, but don't pester, but do be polite and do be professional in doing that.
Another great thing, this is actually a point that Scott Morris and Patricia brought up yesterday, which practice owners would love, and if you can convey this to them, you're golden, is that you're going to help train their staff on specific things. The practice is like a family, and a lot of the staff, your coworkers, your teammates, don't really understand much about eye care. They understand other things, how to intake a patient, how to do that. But if you train them on what you're doing in your patient care, it's going to go a long way for the patient, the business, and everybody involved. They'll be more equipped to handle the phone calls for incoming patients who want to potentially schedule an appointment with you because the people at your front will understand more about what you actually do as a doctor. So communicate that to the doctors when you're looking for those jobs. If they ask you, what sets you apart? Well, one thing I concentrate on is communicating with my staff and educating them on exactly what I do so they can be better equipped to book appointments and fill your practice so we can generate more revenue together.
Yeah, I can't stress that enough. I mean, most of you will be going into a private practice. Some of you will be going into retail, hospital. It doesn't matter where you're going. You need to communicate what your value is to that organization. Each organization is going to have a different value proposition. If I'm a private practice owner, let's say I'm the practice in which you're coming into. If I'm a private practice owner, my goal, it's my family business. I feed my kids with it and pay their college tuition with it. It's my business. If you're not coming here with revenue on your mind, you will not be a fit here. And I guarantee you that that's pretty much what it is across the board. Your mind is geared into good clinical care, which is fantastic and essential, but it's not necessarily going to secure you a job. They're worried about making revenue every day, right? Making it profitable. If it's a corporate environment, I'm gonna keep going on this one because this one's key. If it's a corporate environment, what are you going to do to represent that brand, the efficiencies within the office? Are you going to collaborate well with the other staff members? And are you going to practice to the full extent of what you can do in that office to make lens crafters, wherever it might be, look phenomenal? If it's at a VA hospital, are you going to play within the lines? This is an organization with more structure to it, where the front desk has been there for probably longer than you ever will, and we just don't want to piss them off. So each organization has its own value structure. That's obviously not what it is at every VA hospital, but you have to find out what that is. Think about it. Do some investigation. And when you go there, don't just say, here's my resume, and don't just say, I'm great at patient care, and this was my GPA. They don't care at all. They want to know what you're going to do to bring their organization value. Most of the time, it comes down to you being able to prescribe, diagnose, generate revenue for the practice. That's essential in every business. So think how you deliver that value statement and keep it concise.
I don't have 3 things or 4 things. I only have 1 thing for you guys, okay? So if it comes to career success, okay, and I'm just saying what Matt said and what Patricia and what you guys had said in a different way, because I had a talk about it today. But it's really being a problem solver to add value, okay? That's what you got to think about with everything that you do if you want to be successful. So people got problems. Society has problems. Company has problems. They're looking for you to solve them. So you should always, you shouldn't come to an interview or a job thinking me, which I think a lot of people do.
Yep.
And I know Matt agrees with this completely. Think about, well, what is it that they're trying to get me to, or what is it that I can do to solve those problems? So like Matt said, money is obviously probably number 1 on the list, right? So how do we generate more profit for a practice? So I know, Matt, when you got your first job in San Diego, I looked at the Yelp, he set up a Yelp review, they were all 5 stars, and I'm like, oh my gosh, that's adding value right there, right? That's how you got your job.
Yep, and bringing in a new modality of care, bringing in dry eye, bringing in glaucoma when the doc wasn't glaucoma certified, and bringing on those things. And if I had downtime, doing marketing for the practice.
Now guys, that's not a job description, right? You should never let your job title limit what you do, right? You should never. you should always be thinking about what is it that I can do to add value. And when you can do that, I'm pretty sure you're going to get your raise. You're going to get the jobs you want. I guarantee it.
Yeah, Brett brought up staff a second ago. It's really one of those things that you know, staff's a word we all hear. We know that you've got to have a front desk person, a tech, a scribe, or whatever. But I don't think a lot of people really understand the importance and the value that your staff can bring if you treat them right. If you come in and you be a part of the team, you're not above them. You're not somebody that they are, you know, having to answer to just because you're the doctor. You're a part. You know, you come in, you really want to train them. You get on board if you're bringing a new modality, a dry eye or a glaucoma or whatever it is. You bring them in and you teach them first and the why. Why am I doing this? What questions do I need to ask? Those trigger words, you know, that the patient calls and says, my vision's great 1 minute and awful the next, and when I blink, it's a whole lot better. Your front desk person should know, hey, there's a dry eye patient. Let's get them in. But if you get them passionate about it, it translates, and your staff will make connections with your patients. Your patients will enjoy coming to the practice a whole lot more. And it's not just about you anymore. It's about the whole entire experience from front door to back.
So I got an idea. Let's play a little game here, just us.
Okay.
We're just going to do rapid fire, say a couple of words. What value can an optometrist bring to a practice? So I'll start. Facebook ads.
Instagram.
Staff training.
Medical expertise.
Going door to door in the community to drum up business.
Bring in dry eye, omega-3s, and warm compress masks.
Take your time off and go see some medical doctors and get diabetic referrals to the practice.
Networking through modalities outside of just, you know, going door to door, getting on social media, coming to things here at Vision Expo and other conferences like that.
Educating your community as well, getting your face in front of the community so they understand you as individuals and want to come to see you.
Writing content on newgradoptometry.com.
I like that one. Lunch and learns at local businesses.
Guys, if your practice website is not mobile optimized, please do them a favor and get it mobile optimized.
Strengthening the co-management network. That will go a long
like
way.
that.
Just bringing the practice into the future, getting them to. A lot of the older docs don't understand what you guys do. You have a completely different education than they do, so make them aware of what you know that they may not, and that's going to go a long way too.
Volunteer opportunities to get different experiences.
If you're paperless, if you're on paper still, which are many practices, get them ready for paperless. Biggest headache and huge value proposition you could bring.
Right, so what Matt's saying is digitize things, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. You know, I use Google Forms a lot at work. You can use Google Forms to do patient surveys. You can use Google Forms to do a test a marketing piece. So that would be something I would consider.
Let's keep it going. Just until someone drops the hot potato
I'm
here.
not going to lose. I mean,
Keep going. One more round. I got more. I got a couple
Here's
more.
one for you that I guarantee you hadn't thought about it. Host a CE at your practice. It's not that
Ooh.
hard. It's a lot of a CE. A lot of state organizations will let you do that. It's really not a hard process, and I guarantee you your name is going to be remembered really fast.
Continue learning. So keep your ears to the ground and continue learning new things that might be beneficial for yourselves and the practice as a whole, and then convey that to everyone in the practice as well, so that they can all benefit from what you've learned.
Very simply making sure the practice itself looks and feels as professional as possible, as clean and professional as possible.
One more round. Create a blog, either on WordPress or Medium. You don't need to look at any other platforms.
I think a lot of patients these days come in, they're empowered, right? Because they got their smartphones. They know exactly what condition they probably have in their eye, maybe their sty or something, they probably looked it up. But patients know exactly what's, they know a lot. They do a lot of research before they come in. So training staff to communicate better so that you can meet those demands.
Team building. I know that sounds like a nice little, golden word, but it really means something. If you not only train your staff on an actual condition, but take them out and do something fun. Build that family atmosphere. Bowling, escape rooms, things like that have been some of the most successful things we've done with our staff, and they come back and for the next, couple of months work together better than they ever have, and it's because they've had a little fun, they understand each other better, and they don't dread having to come to work. They see these people more than they see their families. Make sure they, can communicate and like each other. Personality buildings, things like that are good approaches.
On that same topic, just be friendly. Be friendly to everybody in your office. and you'll be the most loved person in the entire practice and the most valuable because you'll raise the spirits of everyone. And when that first patient interaction is with the person at the front desk, if they're all bummed and grumpy because potentially you were bummed and grumpy when you talked to them, the patient's also going to be bummed and grumpy. But if you're upbeat when you talk to your staff, they're going to be upbeat when they talk to the patients, and the patients are going to have a much better experience, and they're going to communicate that with the community.
And here's a tactic you can start today. Click through your second and third connections on LinkedIn. And click, 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 connect, 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 connect. Build your network.
Now so anyone out there who is going to hand over a resume and say, hire me, or say, hey, I want my quarterly raise, and you haven't thought about one of these things, or you don't fall into one of these categories, or you feel like you're really trying to bend it and, maybe I do, you're wrong. Do it. You have plenty of ideas now.
Let's go for a few more rounds.
Yeah, well,
I'm
I
just
also
kidding.
want to do, no, let's go for another, just 2 rounds here. These things will absolutely not only get you fired, but will not work. I would say talking down on staff or thinking that you're above them because you're the optometrist. You're lateral. If anything, you should portray yourself as there for them, not the opposite. Bring bagels.
So we're talking about how we're getting fired?
Yeah, basically the worst things you could do to add value to a practice or take away value from a practice.
I guess, patients come in all shapes and forms, so really knowing how to deal with them. There's going to be difficult patients for sure. And as a professional, I think you have to learn how to, even if you're upset on the inside, and I've had a couple of those, actually I've had a lot of those, you have to maintain your composure and be professional about it.
Yeah, feeding off of that, being professional at all times. It doesn't matter if there's a patient right in front of you, whether you're talking to your front desk person, you're hiring OD, whoever it is. Remember that what comes out of your mouth really represents your character, your integrity, and we all have moments. We all need to vent for a second, but make sure that you still do that professionally because, once you've kind of established yourself as a negative, force within the practice, it's really hard to come back from that.
Gossip. Gossip is huge. It runs rampant in practices. One of the ways that I like to handle the situation when somebody is, gossiping at me, I'll either just ignore them completely and, not even give what they're saying relevance. I'll walk away, or I'll say, I don't entertain conversations like that, so that they know for the future. At that moment, it might be an awkward transaction between you and that person, but in the future, they're not going to come up to you and gossip again because they know that that's the answer that they're going to get.
Shying away from additional days or additional hours. I'm sorry, but you're a new grad. You may have an OD at the end of your name, but got to start from the bottom.
That's the title of this talk. We
Now
just
we're
need
here.
that Drake song, yeah. Quy, let's make a huge pivot here. We just surveyed 243 students like a week ago. 34% were worried about paying off their student loans. 30% were confident. The rest were kind of in the middle somewhere. But, tell me about the loan situation. I'll put it out there. I've got $130,000 in debt. But that's really low compared to other people that I know who are $250,000 and up. So you deal with this directly at Suny and with colleagues at other optometry schools. What do you think?
So how do they deal with the situation? So I graduated with 150. I was out of state for a year, so I guess that's why I took a little bit more than you. But I think it's really important for you guys to learn about finances, personal finance. Do you guys read books at all on these things? Or I know there's schools usually have talks on these, but you really have, sort of like patients in the clinic. When you're an intern, you don't really take ownership of it so much because, my supervisor's going to check it, you know what I mean? So you don't, but once you're a doc, like it's you're the last, the buck stops there, right? So I think you got to do the same thing with your personal finance. You got to learn about it. You got to take accountability for it. You got to know what your interest rates mean, right? So what I did when I graduated was, again, career capital is really important for me. So I want to make sure that I can pay down my loans so that I can take on jobs that the salary won't be an issue for me. So in fact, I took a massive pay cut to work in my current job, but I love it way more because it allows me to have other opportunities. So really cutting down your debt is really important. What I did was I really focused on the ones that have the most interest rates first, right?
Highest interest rate or high principal on that loan.
Yeah, and something that a lot of people don't know, and we wrote an article about this on New Grad, and that is interest rates accrue daily, right? So if you are going through My Great Lakes and you're paying your monthly loans at the end of the month, Well, that's 30 days or 31 days that your loan is accruing interest. Or even if you pay it every 2 weeks, that's 14 days that it's accruing interest on your principal. So what I did was I made payments as soon as I can. So if I'm working an extra day on a Saturday, I'm going to throw that in right there. Because it lowers your principal right away, and so it's, you're not building interest on a higher principal, and that's a big deal.
I'd say the biggest tip I have around student loans that I recently learned was, call the loan company who you have the most loans with and try to find a friend there. They're actually all really nice. I think they just feel really, really bad for us. And what I found was talking to them was really helpful. So for example, I was on one income-based repayment plan, and they said, and I went on the phone, and I just needed to reapply. And they basically said, hey, did you know that new law just passed where it's X instead of this, and the government will pick up 50% of, I forget the exact details, it's called the repay plan, and you can look this up. And they saved me right there a tremendous amount of annualized money, and it was just from calling them. So the website could get confusing. I think personally I'm going to start to just call them once a month and say, does this look right? Should I be doing this? Because they really understand it, and if you wrap your head around this rather than avoiding it, you'll be the most suited for success.
Yeah, so I also think it's important to establish a mentor, somebody that's already, been through this, done it, and has maybe established a financial advisor that they trust. I'm not saying you have to throw a bunch of money at a financial advisor that you don't have, because let's face it, when we get out of school, we really don't have anything to give to anybody else, because we're trying to pay back these loans and do everything ourselves. But we don't come out of schools with MBAs, most of us. These guys are incredibly business savvy. They've learned it, they know it. But day one, most of us don't know that stuff. And if you feel a little bit timid, ask people, talk to people, call, email, find a mentor that's not just your clinical mentor, but also your success mentor, somebody that you've seen establish a practice, or they've got a lifestyle that you want, 10 years down the road. Hey, how did you do that? How did you get there? I want to do the same.
A great resource is the Khan Academy. They make these mathematical formulas and principles extremely simple to understand, and just understanding what compound interest is will scare you into not wanting to have these loans anymore. So just make sure you understand what you're getting into, and it will really help you when you look towards the future.
Let's talk about practice setting, just kind of jumping around. I feel like it's a Tim Ferriss interview now. Brett, you came into eye care. You've had it around your whole life, but now you're getting a little bit deeper into it. As a bit of an outsider, how do you feel about the different modalities? And I'm talking private practice, retail, like a Luxottica, a Walmart, a National Vision, something like that. Hospital-based care. With an unbiased opinion, is one good? Is one bad? Why do people look down on some modalities when necessarily that's a bit of a judgment? Maybe I'm leading that because I feel it's a bit of a judgment.
Yeah, so I guess let me take a step back here. What frustrates me is when people think that anything in life is one size fits all. We're all individuals. We all have individual tastes. We all have individual goals. And that's what kind of makes the world go round. If we all liked the same things, if we all had the same desires, we would all live on top of each other and nobody would really be able to move. So it's very important that we all do have incredible amounts of differences. Now, when Matt asks, which is good, which is bad, they're all good. It just depends on what's good for you. So that's really what I was talking about before. You have to look deep inside yourself and say, hey, what are my values and what do I want to do in practice? If you want to collect a paycheck, if you want stability, if you want those type of things, retail could be very good for you. You're going to get benefits. You're going to get a nice salary. You're going to get those things.
You have the sublease side as well, which some people don't know what a sublease is, but you have some feeling of ownership there and control.
And you have that feeling of ownership and control, exactly. And if you want kind of the sky to be the limit, then you got to also, you have to think about more of that entrepreneurial side of things. You're going to take a lot of sacrifices in the beginning to see your future as, hey, I can be up here, here, wherever I want to be.
Yeah, we're talking a lot about how to rise above the rest and, provide business value to private practices or practice owners in general. What about those of us who really want to practice optometry? That's why we became doctors, right? We're not business people. We didn't go to business school, and in fact, I really want to, I want to be an employee. I want to bat away those student loans. I feel like private practice might not be the right modality for you if that's who you are.
I've seen folks go in one and switch to the other. I was just talking with like a super accomplished resident with a fellowship, the whole thing, and she's at a LensCrafters in New York, and absolutely it's the perfect fit for her, yet, you know, from a high level, we wouldn't think that, right? We would say this person is geared for a totally different lifestyle. Patricia, how did you get into niche-based ocular disease, co-management care? Why was that the right modality for you? Personal story side of things.
Yeah, so for me, I actually was planning to do a cornea contact lens residency. About a week, maybe two before match, I kind of got this gut feeling that I was going to be really not happy there, and maybe I should do ocular disease, and completely did, you know, a 180 and decided to match somewhere else. Best decision I ever made, because I was able to deepen my knowledge in disease. I realized that I could still, when I got out, if I wanted to learn specialty lenses, I could still do that. And through doing that, I opened a lot of doors. I went to a lot of networking events when I was a resident. I presented at Academy, so I got my name out there that way. There's some other companies that do residency-specific kind of things, and so I went to those. I met people, I learned things, and then I started watching for, you know, any kind of ad, any kind of, this was, of course, before Covalent was around, but any kind of job listings, anything that I could find that I thought might be, you know, in the area that I wanted to be at. So when I got those, I started narrowing down location first, because I knew there was part of the, you know, areas I wanted to be in, areas I didn't want to be in, close to family, not close to family, things like that. So I started there, and then I basically just started talking to people until I found something that felt right for me. And I knew I loved disease. This was something where I could go in and immediately hit the ground running with it. And so that's what I did. And I found that for the vast majority of the time, that was what my passion was. And then I learned through the 4 years of doing that there were some primary care elements that I actually missed. I never would have thought that coming out of residency. I would have thought that not doing, I mean, honestly, I did about 5 refractions a year in that practice. I could count them on one hand. And I thought I would love that, and I did from some elements, but then I realized that there was a lot of ways you can't grow that way. And so now I'm broadening myself into a private practice. But that's another example of trying a niche. You don't know if you're going to love it until you do it yourself.
Yeah, I like the idea of residency. Patricia spoke more about it. I would just, one word of caution. If you're doing a residency because you feel you have momentum from 4, 8, 12 plus years of school, don't do it because of that. Do it because it's going to get you to your certain goal down the road, not because you're not sure what to do next and you feel that that will give you the answer. You're just going to end up disappointed in 12 months.
Yeah, I completely agree.
Don't steal someone else's spot either.
No.
Let someone take it.
No, I talk to a lot of people that are, you know, March-ish of their residency year, and they're in the same place that Quy was talking about that these fourth years are in, March-ish of their fourth year, because they didn't do it for a specific purpose. They didn't do it to further, you know, that North Star that we were talking about earlier. They just did it to kind of bide their time and make a little bit of money so they could figure it out later.
So we just surveyed, like I said before, we're doing a survey. This was 651 participants, mostly young optometrists. 48% of them wanted a non-clinical career, meaning outside of the exam room, doing something not involving direct patient care. So that's a pretty high statistic, and I think it speaks to the millennial generation a bit. So we can talk on that, and, you know, just curious, show of hands, do you guys have any interest in potentially doing things outside the exam room, even if it's part-time? Okay, couple back there. So, you know, this is an important topic, I think, because disruption in eye care has come traditionally from companies outside of us that don't necessarily have our best interest, but more the interest of their company, the venture capitalists that support them, et cetera. And I think out of those 48% of people, if they truly can take a non-clinical pathway, that they could do a lot of good for eye care. Eye care is going to change, there's no doubt about it. There's going to be some great technology that comes along, services, efficiencies, and if you feel that you have one of those ideas, you should bring it to the light. It's extremely possible and plausible. Quy, any insight on this? You took a bit of a non-clinical path.
Yeah, you know, but my path is, you know, as I'm seeing patients and as I'm trying to figure out what it is that I really want to move forward to, I knew that it wasn't going to be owning a practice. So I already made that decision. So at that point, it becomes, well, what other options would I want to be a part of? And it just so happens that there was an opportunity that made themselves available at Suny, and This is why it's so important, again, to problem solve, okay? I think that's one of the main reasons why I was able to get into a non-clinician job. When I was a student, I was always very involved. So whether it means, setting up a program or running the AOSA, I was doing it. When Matt and I was invited to come back and speak at the Suny Career Symposium, well, Matt, of course, always agrees, and I agreed. So
Just say yes to everything.
Just say yes, right? Because people can see that you love being a part of the community, that you are somebody who's going to roll up your sleeves and get your hands dirty. And then, so when it came time for me to interview for the job, even though it's not something that I might not have a lot of experience in, because I've already proved a lot of value ahead of time, it wasn't like I was getting an hour interview. I've already been interviewed for 7-8 years. That's kind of what I felt like. So you have to kind of have that same mindset with people that you meet as well. So whether it's somebody from industry or somebody at a school or your colleagues, I think any chance that you get to help them, you should do it without asking for anything in return. I think it'll come back to help you a lot.
Yep.
Yeah, one thing I want to add to that is remember that it doesn't have to be all or none. I do work with Covalent, I do work with new grad, but I still see my patients as well. So you don't have to stop being a clinician to also be a non-clinical optometrist. You can do a lot of things and make that, braided together however makes you happiest. You can, try out a few things and find what your passion is, and maybe eventually that does lead to a full-time position doing something outside of seeing patients, but you don't have to start there.
And I think the fastest way to get into that is start writing. Writing can lead to other media can lead to consulting can lead to speaking, so on and so forth, and you could flourish your idea that way. And if you're not sure where to start writing, if you have a LinkedIn profile, LinkedIn has a built-in kind of blog type of feature, and that's the easiest way to get your thoughts out there. You don't need to be, the utmost professional, top in the industry, but your thoughts, your ideas are unique, and you should share them. That's a great way to get started. In the interest of time, I want to go through resumes, cover letters, salary negotiations. So we're going to have to do this kind of rapid fire. So let's start with resume tips in general. I think I got into trouble with trying to make it too fancy, and that backfired. It was really difficult to edit things. It was always hard to get it to fit on the right amount of pages or whatever it was. So personally, I like a Google Doc because, copy control is easy. You can, look at it on your phone, wherever you need it. There's lots of resume upload sites where you can upload from Google Drive. So Google Docs is great. But keep it simple. Keep out extra personal stuff. What do you think, Quy?
Well, I read quite a bit of resumes and CVs myself because I helped our students with them. I guess one thing I would say is I have a problem with hoarding my experiences. So like stuff from high school, like Interact Club President, Key Club. I was like still putting that in there. And you know what? That's great, and like that, those times are fun. But I feel like, now that you're professional, you can probably start leaving some of those things out. You know what I mean? Like it doesn't have to be 5 pages. I mean, you're a new grad. Like you shouldn't have 5 pages. It should be 1 page for a resume, 2-page CV, probably max, unless you have that many experiences. The other thing I would say is don't have just one resume or CV. You have a master one with everything, but then tailor your CV or resume depending on the job you're applying for. So if it's, I have both clinical and non-clinical experience. So what do I decide to put? Well, if it's more of a non-clinical job, I might take out some of the clinical stuff and not focus more on those as much and put more of my clinical experiences in there, and vice versa.
Completely just stole mine.
So good.
No, it's okay. So elaborate on, first thing, so simple. Please spell check your resumes. Please do not send something out with an outdated email, phone number, address. If we call you and it's somebody else's number or you don't have that phone anymore, guess what? You're not getting the job. So please keep it updated in that way. And then I can't stress enough what Quy just said about having, 2 different things. Have one that's a shorter version that's ready to go always. That, if you're at a meeting like this and somebody says, hey, can you shoot over your CV? You've got it already accessed. It's easy to update. Keep that. But then also keep a true comprehensive one that has everything. But phase out, when you first get out, sure, put your student stuff. Year or 2 out, maybe there's some really relevant student stuff that you want to keep in there. 5-10 years out, you're probably not going to need to be leaning back on that. So you can step it out, but keep it updated. If you're doing things in your professional life, keep that comprehensive. I've got an oculoplastic surgeon whose resume is about 16 pages long.
Nice job.
But it is all relevant. It is all lectures. It is all articles. It is all whatever he's done. And so when he needs that, he can go to it. When we have to send it out for credentialing or some sort of industry, we've got that there.
Yeah, my old colleague and boss, Eric White, his was 20, 30 pages long because he's done hundreds of studies, and each one of those studies adds context. So it depends. It will grow over time.
Big one is just think like Apple, and packaging matters. So you want to make sure that your formatting is perfect. If you're using bullets, use bullets. If you're using numbers, use numbers. I wouldn't use numbers, but if you're using them, use them. And if you're using dashes, use dashes. If the font is, 15 font for your headers, don't make 115, 117. Make
I'm
them
so
all
proud
15.
of you right now.
I know,
It's
and I've just gotten kind of like kicked from him all the time because my formatting used to be terrible, but now I do my best to do a better job at it. So it's something that I
think I need to make that
my
my ringtone or something now. I could listen to that all day.
It really does set you apart, though. I mean, you wouldn't believe the
Huge.
number. You think that yours is, everybody's is going to look as good as yours. I promise you it doesn't. There are some bad
And
resumes
keep
out
it
there.
minimal. White space will help you on something like this. Focus on what matters.
Yeah, I typically advise folks to spend less time formatting their resume and making it look beautiful and more time actually networking and connecting with people. LinkedIn is your most current resume and also is your opportunity to hang on to those experiences, have your litany of experiences on LinkedIn, make your resume punchy and powerful. It's a tool that, quite frankly, folks in career development departments and employers are churning through quite a bit. You want some relevant information, make sure you got your cell phone, direct line, email. People forget to chronologically order their experiences and put the locations. Simple stuff, but powerful.
And Danny and I always talk when we're looking at candidates' resumes, it's a PDF file typically, and it's named something outrageous, and it's a real subtlety. Just name it, Matthew Geller OD resume, not final version 3, 7.1, sample version, and name it for some other employer it was for. Just keep it simple. Those little things matter. It's subtleties, it's details, but optometry is detailed. Let's do cover letters, but way faster, because salary negotiations are a good topic. Cover letters, I would say, don't make them shorter rather than longer. Divide your experience and what makes you the best in 3 points and 3 points only, and try to just stick to those. Keep it brief. Information overload is bad.
When you apply for a job that everyone wants to apply to, a lot of them will look very similar. They're very generic looking. So you want to make sure you do your research on who you're sending this cover letter to, right? Because they'd like to be personalized. You want to see what their business motto is, the doctor who's working there, what they're looking for, and tailor that whole CV, the cover letter, to the employer. That's really important.
Yeah, absolutely. And keep it professional. There's a time to be completely laid back and use very, common kind of conversational language. This is a good place to present yourself in a professional manner, but still connect, like we said, to the things that actually touch on that practice. You can have part of it that's kind of a form, that you don't have to rewrite every single time, maybe that's personalized to you, but do take the time to research the practice and put in those personalized little pearls because that's going to stand out in a professional way.
And you got to remember the purpose of the cover letter is to get to the interview. One thing you can do as an extra, not as in lieu of a cover letter, is a video cover letter. So upload a video to YouTube that can show your personality off, and that can help you get that interview.
Be creative. Unless the opportunity requires a cover letter, you can certainly convey that information in a creative way that way, or via email. Get the information over to the employer who feels that you're talking to them directly, not just a template.
Yeah, don't have a field template at all. All right, salary negotiations. Who wants to get paid, right? Salary negotiations are kind of the same as bonus negotiations or performance negotiations. Essentially, look, the number one theme, I don't think anything matters more than this. If you want something, in this case dollars, or some other benefit, healthcare, CE, something that equates to dollars or time, you have to give something to get that. You don't get it because you're not a teacher. You don't get tenured and get all these perks. You have to work for it. Paid time off. You have to work for it. You have to earn it. You have to provide value to get value. So, let's talk just in general. When negotiating a salary, guys, any major tips? How does one bring up, hey, this is the value I will bring in exchange for this funding? Brett, go ahead.
that's the best point, is what you just described, is you need to understand the value that you're bringing first. You need to be able to answer the question why. If an employee, if you say I want $140,000 a year, and the employer says, well, why do you want $140,000 a year, and why? How is that valuable to my practice to offer that to you? You need to understand that answer. So it's just like us coming here and speaking on the panel. We need to know our material. So you need to know your material as well.
Be careful when you bring that up. If this is a practice, somebody that you've talked to 20 times before you sit down the first time together, maybe that's okay once you're in the conversation and you feel comfortable that it's okay to bring that up. But when you're first learning a practice, remember that you're probably not going to have just one conversation with that person. You're not going to have one interview and be done and you're hired and that's it, most likely. So, give yourself some time to learn the practice before you go in and say the very first, minute you meet them, so what are you going to pay me? Because that's not going to come across very well. Or how much time do I get off? What's my benefits? You've spoken a lot on being sure to negotiate some of the benefits as opposed to maybe the starting number, because you don't want to come in and look like the only reason that you're there is to collect a paycheck. You want to look like you're bringing something to the table, and in exchange for that, you then get a paycheck.
So let's talk about performance-based compensation, right? This is one way you can negotiate in your favor. Patricia, I think you're working with someone or a colleague who's doing one type of thing. What I've seen traditionally is compensation where it's a percentage of what the practice collects under your name for that day. So let's paint an example here. Typically, the percentage is between about 13 and 20. Let's settle on 15% here, right? So if you, for what you build, the glasses you sold, the contacts you sold, the money collected, not the gross, right? Not just what was sent to, a VSP, and it's what you got back, what the practice actually brought in. 15% of that money for the day is what you would get as your compensation. Often those numbers can be above a daily average. Typical averages now around $400 or $500 for an 8-hour day of work. And so this can propel you up $800,000 or more a day based on the percentage, but you have to earn it. If you're not prescribing your transitions or your Crizal, or you're not selling the omega-3s, and you're really not performing for the practice, you wouldn't get that compensation. It could be dangerous as well if that's your whole way your compensation is rooted. If you don't do enough, you could be making well below. Imagine making $100 or $200 for the day. That won't work. So you got to be careful when you negotiate that. How does it look like? I think you guys use a monthly or yearly component that you've seen.
Yeah, I think you can do that in a couple of different ways. Daily is definitely one way. A lot of practices will run their numbers at the end of the month and compare that to what they're going to be paying you on a base salary. Maybe you get paid every 2 weeks. They'll take the number at the end of the month, see if your percentage was higher or lower than your base, and if it was higher, then you get basically a production bonus.
Yep.
Something that you want to look at when you first join a practice is not going in day one on production only. A practice, unless they can guarantee you that you're going to walk in and see 20 patients that first day, you need to be really careful with that quickly. A lot of times in resumes, they'll build it in, though. 90 days, you're straight base pay, and then if you make higher than that, awesome. But you're not going to be penalized if you don't, and then after that, it kind of changes over. So.
And I wouldn't recommend doing this if you're on paper charts. This is really an EHR kind of specific thing. You need to be able to easily track, the receipts from you and be able to divide that fairly quickly.
Yeah, definitely.
We
did an article in New Grad about all of the options.
Oh, you did an
though.
article?
Yeah,
Man.
base salary. One of the negatives on that, great, because you can predict. You know exactly what you're taking home every 2 weeks or every month or whenever you get paid. The dangers there is motivation. If you do that for a year and you're going to get paid the same whether you see one patient or 30 patients, then really what's the motivation there?
So let's just close this out. We're at the hour mark here. It's been super fun. Let's just do one tip each. I'll start it up so you guys have some time to think. What are we going to do
One
here?
tip for what? Any tip?
Yeah, I guess so. Let's do one career tip. I think just it comes down to value. I just think as we're not used to thinking through the employer's eyes, they're running a business, no matter who it is or what environment it is. They're running a business. You can't just be a sap on their resources. If you're not ready to give, a coefficient over 1, just a little bit more to them than you're willing to take, it's not going to work out. And anything will work out in your favor if you're able to communicate that value and show how you're going to help them grow. It's a business at the end of the day. It's not a charity. So make sure you know how to deliver value and how to communicate that.
I guess if you work in a private practice or even other mode of practice, I think just think about, this is talked about a lot, what technology is doing to our lives, what's doing to our work. Think about how you can use these tools and opportunities to solve some problems in your practice. I think there's a lot of tools now, right? There's a lot, and you have to kind of go out and learn these. They're so easy to learn. Khan Economy, Udemy, YouTube. You can learn, pretty much any.
That's a good one. Creative Live.
Creative Live, I haven't heard that one. But you can learn some of these tools and see if you can help your practice kind of get up to date, because I think that we're still really behind, So that would be a great way to add value to the practice and then get your negotiation salary that you want.
Yeah, I definitely think most private practices, especially, if they've been established more than 5-10 years, they're probably behind. So you can bring something to that. But my biggest tip would be keep an open mind. Don't put the pressure on yourself to know exactly what your future looks like day one. Go to conferences, talk to people, see what they're doing. And if you want to try it, try it. Don't box yourself in just because you think you had to find the right fit day one right out of school.
The biggest one is relationships. Relationships are your best friend. Careers are built on relationships. They're built on skills, but a lot of it is built on relationships. So start making those relationships early. Connect with the influencers in the industry. Everybody is happy to provide you guys with assistance, to provide you with answers to the question, and it feels good from their end too. If somebody can answer a question for you, it feels good for them as well. So build those relationships, ask people questions, and all of that will open tons of doors for you that you didn't even know existed.
Don't be so hung up on what you think your first job is going to be right out of school. It's just that. It's your first job. It's a long career ahead of you, and it's the class you haven't taken, the lesson you haven't learned in school, and you're getting paid for it. It's going to be a really good stepping stone and a good experience.
So I think the way to contact myself, Patricia, Brett, and Danny would be to go on either newgradoptometry.com, but easier would be CovalentCareers.com, and there's a chat bubble. It's a circle in the bottom right-hand corner. We literally work all day and all night because it's a startup. So we are always there. We are really focused now on coaching new graduates, optometrists, senior ODs on what they need to do to basically do all this stuff, and we get really specific. And if we can't answer it, we refer it out. So literally we'll respond in under 2 minutes, unless it's really late. One of us is brushing our teeth. We try, drop the phone in the sink, problems. Quy, how can they get in touch with you?
Find me on LinkedIn. I practice what I preach. So if there's a problem that you guys have and I have time and resources to help you, I'm more than willing to help. So you can reach out to me anytime.
Quy. Quy. Contact him. All right, guys, this has been tremendous, and we're going to produce it for on YouTube for everyone to watch. So thank you all for attending out there. Yes, all the applause. Yes. Thank you, guys.